foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. Thou coverest it. The antecedent is the earth. He covered it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. If the earth is covered like a garment and the water stood above the mountain, I am convinced from studying certainly Hugh Ross's position, and I think you've followed that, is the reason for believing a local flood is only not because the scriptures teach that, but it's because they know full well if the earth is billions of years old, they think the geologic column is a record of that, and this flood would have wiped it out. So they're only holding to this, I think, ludicrous doctrine that he built this big boat and stayed in there for a year for a local flood because they don't want to upset the geologic teaching. That's my thinking.
Okay. Actually, I'm not even going to argue for the geologic column. I think that there's good reason to, but I'm not going to because I'm not a geologist. I think there's good evidence there.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Did you say there's good evidence to believe in the geologic column?
Yeah,
okay.
I believe there is. But I also would just go by logic. We currently have about 30 million species living on the earth. According to the account in Genesis of the flood, Noah had to take 2 of every kind and 7 of many other kinds. So 30 million times 2 and 7, that's a tight ship. And but the local view, if you combine it with Genesis 7, actually specifies which animals need to come on the ark. And so that narrows it down to just a few hundred. So I guess that's a pretty strong argument to me that the frame of reference there is local. It's what God is trying to convey the story of that area for Noah. Yep.
Okay. I hate to interrupt the flow of thought, but I believe that we're on, Jamin, on your last question, your third question for Dr. Hovind.
Okay. Dr. Hovind, my question is, we've covered it a little bit, so maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. There was a time in which the church, the official teaching of the church was flat earth, was geocentrism, that we had major leaders in the church who were right on many theological issues, Calvin and Luther, for instance, but they believed that the earth was flat based on texts such as we've already covered. And so I guess my question is, how did the church come to change its view about the shape of the earth and Earth's orbit around the sun?
Okay, I would disagree strongly that I don't think there was ever a time that the church taught the earth was flat. That's been researched thoroughly, and it's just simply not true. The Bible teaches very clearly in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22, that the Lord sits upon the circle of the earth. I think Christians that read their Bible have always known it was round. I don't care what Luther or anybody else taught. I care what does the Bible teach. There may have been a few people who taught that. They were simply wrong, because the Bible clearly teaches the earth is round. As far as the geocentric theory, I am a heliocentric centrist, okay? I taught earth science for years. I am pretty firmly convinced the sun is in the center, not the earth. But there are a surprising number of people today, scientists today, who are still geocentrists. I disagree with them. We can talk about all the Foucault pendulum and all the arguments for heliocentrists if you'd like. But I think that the earth is the center of God's attention and may actually be the center of the universe, even though it's not the center of our solar system. There'd be two different things. As far as we know, we look in all directions and see stars equally spaced on all directions. So the earth may indeed be the center of the universe, not the center of the solar system. That's the difference.
Okay. So in your view, then, it's not that science really had nothing to do with changing people's views on the shape of the earth and the relative orbit around?
I would say people have taught things that are wrong throughout history, which is why I'm here tonight to straighten this out. But that is not a reflection on the Bible. It's our interpretation of just because some people teach things doesn't mean the Bible teaches things, and that's the confusion. So there may be some people who have taught different things throughout history, that are simply wrong. The Scriptures is what we have to take as our rule of faith and practice, not the current teaching going around. And you mentioned, I guess I don't know if it's rebuttal time, but 30 million species, that's come up several times tonight, and I strongly disagree. The Bible told him to take the different kinds. There are about 8,000 basic kinds of animals in the world. God told Noah to take those in whose nostrils was the breath of life and those on dry land. And the number 30 million includes fish and includes insects, which didn't have to go on the ark. About 8,000 kinds of animals is all that's necessary. Adam could have named them in 2 hours. To say 8,000 words at 100 words a minute. I speak 300 words a minute when I get going fast. At 60 words a minute, you can name 8,000 animals in 2¼ hours. So Adam didn't have to wait all day to find Eve. A couple hours.
Wow.
Okay.
He's very patient. Okay.
All right. I've been looking through the questions, so I think we're supposed to be in the rebuttal phase. Although I've heard you talking a lot, Dr. Hovind. So do you feel like you've accurately, let's see, rebuttal is actually, Jamin, it's your turn to rebut Dr. Hovind's, but I guess the question is do we feel like we've covered this issue? Or do you want to rebut what he said?
Which issue?
Yeah, wait.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna take a leap then, and we're gonna take some of the questions from the audience, and what's gonna happen here is I'll ask the question, and you'll both get about 2.5 minutes to respond. All right, and so the first question, Dr. Hovind will get to go first, and the second question, Jamin, you'll get to go first. And we have quite a few questions on dating, scientific dating, and where that fits into this whole argument. And instead of asking an exact question, I figured that just talking about dating and where it fits into the young earth, old earth debate would probably be enough lead for the both of you.
I don't date, I'm married.
Dr. Hovind, would you like to start talking about the scientific dating method as it relates to the age of the earth?
Scientific dating, like using the internet or something. No. Go ahead and get my slides.
You're determined, both of you, to be funny, huh?
Okay. I cover carbon dating particularly, and several of the common dating methods on my video 7. I won't have time for that in 2.5 minutes, but back in 1949, when carbon dating was first invented by Willard Libby, you have to understand, way before that, in 1830, the geologic column was invented. And dating was really done by the geologic position, which the geologic column doesn't exist anyplace. But that's another long story. Carbon dating didn't work in 1949. The lower leg of a mammoth dated 15,000 years old. The skin dated 21,000 years old. In 1963, it still wasn't working. A living mollusk shell dated 2,300 years old. It is still alive, okay? In 1970, they said if a carbon date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it doesn't entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote. If it's completely out of date, we just drop it. They pick the dates they want. 1971, a freshly killed seal was carbon dated at 1,300 years old. 1975, one part of a mammoth is 40,000 years old, and other parts 26,000. This is coming from the same animal. In 1981, they said no matter how useful it is, the radiocarbon method is still not capable of giving accurate and reliable results. There are gross discrepancies. The chronology is uneven and relative. The accepted dates are actually selected dates. This whole blessed thing is nothing but 13th century alchemy. It all depends upon which funny paper you read. Living snails, carbon dated 27,000 years old. We can go all through history. I mean, it gets worse, okay? 1992, they got 2 mammoths, 22,000 and 16,000. The mammoths were buried side by side. In 1996, they got carbon dates from the same sample, ranging from 53,000 to 27,000. That's a 96% error. This is not science. Carbon dating, potassium argon dating, rubidium strontium dating, doesn't matter.